So, welcome back to Dominate Your Day. I have a really interesting guest that I can't wait for y'all to meet. Her name is Shari Leid. Welcome to the show, Shari.
Thank you. This is so great. And we're in the
Yeah.
same city.
We just in the green room, we were saying, "Where do you live?" And we both live in Dallas, and we had no idea. So, welcome to Dallas. Shari just moved here, and we are thrilled you're here in this entrepreneurial great city. It happens to get a little cold today, which normally we never know what we're going to have. So, just stay around, and you'll see everything in Texas. So,
Yes.
all
Well,
good.
I looked at my car. I was driving. It was 70 degrees or so when I was driving today. And I was thinking, gosh, it feels cold, but this is I'm from Seattle. This is like a Seattle summer.
Yeah, yeah, it's different, right? It's you never know. Well, Sherry, you have an amazing story, and I'd love to open up. This podcast is really for difference makers. These people want to make an impact and they are change makers. And you are just even your story about moving here, just getting to Dallas. But let's go back and can you just share a little bit of how you went from being a litigator to a nationally recognized connection coach and friendship expert? And it's a great
Yes.
story. Great
A-
story.
Absolutely. Well, I was a checklist person. Went to high school, college, law school, got married, had two kids, actually adopted our daughter from China, came back home, found out I was pregnant 2 weeks later. So we had two babies in 1 year. We ended up also with two Labrador dogs. So, the whole checklist
Oh my
scenario, a
gosh.
starter home to our dream home. And, I was that checklist person, and you could be a checklist person for so long until the universe says, your plan, that's nice, but I have other plans for you. So I ended up staying at home with the kids, and I had practiced law at that point, maybe for 16 years actively as a litigator. I still have my license. I still keep it, but I'm thinking about actually taking the Texas bar. We'll
You
see. But I
should.
still have my license in
You
Washington State,
should.
not practicing.
Yeah.
Um, but so I stayed home, and during that time at home, I actually became a fitness instructor while the kids were in school. So I did that for a little bit, and then life gave me another curveball, and I ended up with two hip replacements. So stopped that career. And I ended up at age 50 writing my first book, and now I am 55 and I'm 4 books in. And so this second career started after age 50, and I feel so connected and in line with what I'm here to do. And I have to tell you, I didn't feel that way when I was practicing law.
Well, and I think there's a feeling, Sherry, and we talk about this in the book called Internal Revolution, is just really finding your authentic self. And it starts in the inside, right? On the inside first before it's from external. So tell me, how did you discover yourself in this second career shift?
Well, in this process, I talk about curveballs. Also, I am a breast cancer survivor at age 47.
Wow.
I was diagnosed with breast cancer. My kids were teenagers, but that really was a pivotal point in my life where I adopted. It's a saying, a question. If today were the last day of your life, would you be doing what you're doing now? And I started journaling, and that question I would constantly come up if I was having a bad day or if I wasn't in a great mood. It stopped me. And that's what led me to decide that between my 49th and 50th birthday, I would sit down with 50 women in my life and tell them what I've learned from them. And that just organically became a book. Um, and from there, just the connection from there, I started doing interviews. I started writing more. And I grew up, when I was a kid, I used to love to write, but I thought you could make money writing. And
Mm.
so all of a sudden, here I am at age 50, and I'm writing for major journalistic magazines, online forums. All of a sudden, I'm being interviewed, and I'm talking about friendships because it started out with me interviewing or sitting down with 50 women who were in my life. And I start studying friendships and looking at this, and suddenly I become a friendship expert that's respected in media. And so this whole career, it's like every door started opening once I let myself be me.
Wow. So when did that, when you were on the journey to interview these 50 women, And they were in 50 states. Is that what you were
Uh,
saying? Like, or
that
all
no, that's a different one.
that's
That's
a
yeah,
different, okay,
that's
these were
in
just
yeah.
women you knew and asked them, and
Yes,
you wrote the first
yeah.
book. Okay, talk to us. There was another story where you actually went out and interviewed women in 50 different states. Tell the audience about that.
Yes, and that's really where things really kicked off. So in 2023, I decided that I would travel the US. I had never traveled the US before. I had traveled internationally, but I was adopted. I was orphaned in Korea, South Korea, adopted by Japanese American parents. My parents were born in Seattle, but there's a generation between us. So my dad was actually born in 1922 and my mom in 1929, which meant if you were on the West Coast and you had any type of Japanese blood as your background, you were placed in internment camps during World War II. And that was their experience. So I grew up with this belief because of my parents and their experience that I would not be welcome across the US. And we did stay to the West Coast growing up. So I wanted to personally rewrite that belief and believe I was welcome everywhere. So that was a personal reason for doing it. On a broader scale, we had come out of the pandemic. We had placed ourselves, I say we as a country, placed ourselves in physical bubbles, decide who's safe and who's not. But not only that, we've placed ourselves in mental and emotional bubbles, deciding who I can talk to, who I will like, who I can share my feelings and thoughts with based on the way someone looks or what street they live on. And so I wanted to change that and demonstrate that those things don't really matter. So in every state, I shared a meal with a stranger.
But how did you find these strangers to have a meal
Yeah.
with?
So they were all women. I did this travel alone. And so 27 of them I got on my own, 27 states, 27 women. And there are people like you, for instance, a podcaster that we never met in person. I'm like, oh, okay, she's in Texas. Let me see if she'll meet for a meal. My web designer's in Indiana. Never had met her before. So women like that for 27. And then after that, I reached out on social media and said, these are, the states I have left. This is my project. And people sent me their aunts, their cousins, their former college roommates. And
Love
after
that.
that, 13 states left. And I decided, okay, my biggest fear is if somebody stands me up. So I thought, well, maybe I should look at women business owners because if they stand me up, at least I know where to find them. So I reached out through the internet and said, here's my project. Would you be interested in meeting with me? And I had a big map, circled these different places where everyone was at, and then started to plan the travel.
Wow. So you really got out there to just really see who you were and how you would be received based on this old mindset from your parents that they had grown up with, your adopted parents. Is that kind of the
That
catalyst of what drew you to get out there and do this?
I knew I needed to do it. I knew there was something that was going to change in me. I wasn't quite sure what it was. So initially I said, okay, I'm looking for things that connect us, no matter how different we are, what connects us. And then as I was traveling along, it felt like the conversations instead of different conversations, it felt like one continuous conversation with one teacher where just the body and the voice and the face changed. And the wisdom I received from these women, and it was so amazing because not only did I learn so much from them. After I met them, I would get these email and these texts back saying, I met you at the right time.
Oh,
And, it was life changing actually. So what I ended up getting from it was much more than I ever thought. And it goes, it's the belief that everyone we meet is both our teacher and our student.
so what do people get wrong about friendship and connection that you learn from this experience of going to 50 states, talking to 50 different women that you didn't even know?
Well, one thing that surprised me was, I'm just somebody at the time from Seattle, right? And I had an idea in this project. So I told these women because of the books I wrote before, I knew I was going to try, and I had a publicist, I would get media, I was writing a book about this. So I disclosed that to these women because I wanted releases and let them know this was going to be something I'm talking about. So I thought the objection I would get would be, thank you, but I'm a private person, I'll pass. but I didn't get that objection once. The objection that came up more than once, or the concern, was, I don't know if I'm interesting enough for you.
Oh.
And I thought that was so sad that, somebody who, I don't want to say I'm a nobody, but you know what I mean. It's not as if a big reporter is coming in to sit down with you, or a celebrity. It's just another woman. And for the immediate response to be, I don't know if I'm that interesting enough for you, really hurt my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that thought, that idea, hurts us when we're going out there and trying to make friends. I get asked a lot, how do you make friends as an adult? And I think a big piece that stops us is that idea, the story we're telling ourselves, that, oh, we're not interesting enough for that person.
So I'm hearing a link between connection and confidence. Is there, what do you think that building real friendships helps us lead with, from our authentic self? When you think about that, what were you able to uncover with them when you're like, no, you're very interesting and you have something to share, just like you had something to share with them, they had something to share with you. So there was a link there between them thinking that, they weren't confident enough to have an interview or sit down with somebody and have a visit.
Yeah, you know what I found? So as I was going along, because I was meeting so many women so close in time, and sometimes we sit down and it was like, wow, it was almost as if we had gone to high school together, right? It's like instantly best friends. And other women, it was nice, but it wasn't that same, like, oh, let's plan a trip right now together. And I tried to figure out what that piece was. And a lot of it comes down to is just vulnerability and being open. And when you open up, because you have to be open to connect. It's like anything else, right? That you're trying to connect. If one thing's locked, you can't connect. And it's that vulnerability. And what I realized too, that thing that gave me confidence in traveling across the U.S. is realizing we're all the same. We all want the same things: health, our families to be successful, to love each other, to love our community, safety. And they're really, our goals are all the same. And when you understand that and you realize that, it really makes it easier to have these conversations where we might disagree on how we get to the goal, but understanding that we all have the same goal, it makes it a lot easier.
So how can somebody else rewrite their identity? Just like you were going on a self-discovery trip, and when it feels like it's they don't know who they are, and I think that's what I was hearing you say in your story is I had to go and just really discover what was out there and see who I really was. What would you recommend for other women that or people that want to rewrite their identity, that they're living with an old pattern that's not
Yeah.
who they are?
Yeah. I now, this movement is called Flip the Box. And I also give a keynote entitled Flip the Box. And I'll tell you later why it's called Flip the Box. But one of the key moves, I call them power moves, is the story you tell yourself changes everything about yourself. So I don't believe it's coming up with a new identity, because your identity is who you are. It's chiseling away the stories that aren't yours. And a lot of times we get to this middle age where we've taken on, we're successful, our lives look good, we've done everything that school has told us, our parents have told us, society has told us to do, and we actually don't even know what our own story is. We've been living someone else's story. So to be able to chisel away at that and find out and get back down to where we are, who we are actually, is beautiful. And it is the stories the stories you tell yourself changes everything about yourself. So the question then is, what story do you continually tell yourself about yourself? And is it true?
Wow. Was there somebody that came along, Sherry, and just said, that encouraged you to do this, or was this all internal work that you were just doing from the divorce and the breast cancer and all the things you had gone through, that said, I've got to set out? Where did this idea come from?
I get these ideas and I just roll with them. I always say, start ugly, because it's a lot easier to make ugly pretty than perfect better. And so I just had this idea, and the divorce actually came after this project.
Oh,
Yeah, it came
wow.
after this project, and a lot of the strength of being able to file for divorce and feel confident in myself and know exactly what I can do came from the strength of these women and listening to their lives and what they did, because I had a really, really good life. I had a really good life, but that good life, quite honestly, was stopping me from having a great life.
Because you weren't living your authentic self. Is that what
Yes,
I'm
and
hearing?
also I had a very plush, easy life, and I still do. It's not like all of a sudden life got really hard, but it got different, and I had to jump. And I've never, I just moved to Dallas. Although this is the fourth home that I've owned, it's the first home that I've owned on my own.
Wow.
And that's, these things to do by yourself are scary, but they're they're confidence building. And every time a door has closed for me, everything I've prayed for, wished for has opened. And I think I just had to trust and take that leap of faith.
So I want to close the story loop on the traveling around, the 50 women that you interviewed. You wrote a book after that experience.
Yes, yes.
What's the book called?
It's called Table for 51 because I am the 51st at the table, but it's Table for 51.
And did you ever get all these women together, or how did you,
Yeah,
tell us the journey of getting to go meet each of them, and then
yeah.
how you launched the book and all that?
So the women were between the ages of 20s and 60s. My only criteria was that they keep in contact with me so that I knew that they would be there when I show up. So they were women between the ages of 20s and 60 to 60s, different races, education levels, political beliefs, religious beliefs, economic levels, a very diverse group it turned out to be. And I didn't necessarily go out to search for that. That's just how it played out. And so after I was done with this project, I set up a few Zoom meetings, and whoever could jump on would jump on. And it was interesting because we were all over, all these different time zones. And then my book launch for Table for 51 was just this past February in New York City. So I invited all the women to come, and those who could make it, and many had never been to New York. A lot of them had not. It was a big trip. And everyone at the party, I told them, wear black, except for the women in this book, wear red.
Oh, I love that.
And the big thing was, too, is when I was done with the project, I told all the women, okay, now I'm going to do a survey. I'm going to find out people's religious beliefs and political views, because I didn't ask that during my travels, just to kind of get an idea of who I spoke to. And I told them I was going to share this with the group. Well, I did the survey, and I decided not to share it, because I didn't want to ruin the connection that everyone already had through these Zoom calls. And what I saw in New York, I knew I made the right decision, because these women immediately recognized each other, not just from the Zoom, because they were wearing these bright red colors, bright red. And they were hugging each other, laughing with one another. And only I knew, looking at them, that there's no way this woman and this other woman would have even spoken to each other because of either where they lived in their cities, or what churches they went to, or their economic levels, or whatever it was. And they were hugging and laughing and having the best night of their lives together.
That's so neat. So you are kind of calling yourself this friendship connection expert, I guess, is what I'm hearing. But let's go back to the box story, because I want to make sure we address that, because you have the TED Talk on it, and then you've also have speak on it a lot, and it's a very moving story. So can you take us back to when you were born and where this
Yes.
box story came from?
So this whole, as I mentioned, the keynote I now call Flip the Box, and this is actually a movement called Flip the Box. And the reason I call it that is because I had been orphaned. I mentioned I was adopted from Korea, South Korea. I'd been orphaned, and my story is that I was found in a cardboard box, and I was found without any identifying information. So my birth date, given to me by an orphanage, not really mine. And so this box became an invisible companion for me throughout my life, popping up every once in a while saying, hey, you don't belong. And I realized as I traveled the US, I didn't have set questions. These weren't interviews with the women, these were organic conversations. But there was one question that I kept asking, and that was, where feels like home to you? And what I realized, and I realized this as I was writing the book, is that I was really searching for what home felt like. And what had happened was I realized I had taken that box, that cardboard box that was a symbol of you don't belong. And in these travels, I had flipped it, and it had become a table where connection and belonging were found and everyone was welcome. And so that's why this is now called Flip the Box. And there's a National Archive recognized day, Flip the Box Day, March 5th, which is a day that encourages you to sit down and share a meal with someone that you haven't spoken to for a while, or somebody new, or even a family member that you feel a little disconnected with. Because, sharing food, since the beginning of time, it's always meant safety, survival, and belonging.
Wow. So what do you think are the most common boxes in your research that across talking to these people that people tend to get stuck in?
Yeah, well, honestly, it's living other people's stories and the stories that we're telling ourselves. And so that's the question I ask in my keynote, because now it's flip the box for yourself, your career, and your community. And it all starts with self, because unless you're not connected and aligned, with yourself, you're not going to feel connected and aligned with others, and you're not going to feel connected and aligned in your career. And so what I ask is, if you don't know what box you're stuck in, what is the biggest personal problem that you might be dealing with at this time? And what's the story you're telling yourself about that? Because the stories you tell yourself changes everything about yourself.
And is that kind of the controlling idea throughout the story, throughout the book, is about the
It
story
is.
itself?
That's what it's come to. It's become with the way I speak now about it professionally, but also, when I was traveling around the US, I was looking around and I realized this sense of loss of connection, loss of belonging. It's not just my story. It's everywhere. It's an epidemic in our country. I recently emceed an event where I introduced Dr. Vivek Murthy, our former Surgeon General, and he had put out an advisory that we have an epidemic of loneliness in our country. So I'm not the only one that was stuck in this box. This is an epidemic levels.
But you stepped out and you did something. You took that step and then that next step. And I think that's the message here is, what can you do to step out of that box and get out of that box and think of the story that you want to tell, that's your authentic story, instead of one that you're stuck in your mind. So one story of one of the interviews that really speaks to you, or that you, when you think back of the travels and the writing, was there one story you want to share that really spoke to you from visiting all these different women with all different kinds of backgrounds?
Sure. There's so many, but I'll be really quick. Okay, I met this woman in Williamsburg, Virginia. Her name's Megan, young white woman, very European features, but she took on her husband's Japanese last name when they got married, Yamamoto. So I asked her, and she's a makeup artist, and I asked her, was it hard for her to take on her husband's last name? And she said, no. But after I got married to him, I got booked solid with Asian wedding parties. Oh my goodness. And so we were laughing. And then she said, even funnier is, as I'm working on, the mothers of the bride or these older Asian women, she goes, so often somebody will look and say, oh, I see it now. And they point at her and they're like, I see the Japanese in you. She has, this is a blue-eyed, blonde-haired woman. And so I thought that was hilarious. But then she said, people see what they want to see. Mm-hmm. And I thought that is so spot on. People see what you see what you want to see. You know, our brains are focused. We're wired this way. It's like when you decide what new car you're going to buy, you start seeing it all over, right? We've all
Yes.
had that experience. People
Yes.
see what you want to see. So not only what stories are you telling yourself, what are you focusing on? Because if you're focusing on connection, possibility, or rejection, whatever you're focusing on, you're going to find.
So, what's one strength? These are some rapid fire questions here at the end, but what's one strength or quality that has been your superpower through your journey from? I loved hearing how you wrote as a child and then that came back later and you didn't even recall it. But what do you think is the superpower that kind of was the red thread of consistency throughout your life? And that also, as you got on this journey, that kind of really catapulted you to get all this, to make this happen? You moved to Dallas. Yeah.
Doing not knowing I don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
Just let it. Don't let ugly stop you from moving forward.
Yeah. And there's something that you have in the title about imperfection.
Yeah, my business is called An Imperfectly Perfect Life. And honestly, nothing. If I waited for perfection, I would still be in Seattle. You know.
Yeah, I bet. But you took a brave step. So thinking about table for 51, who would be the three people you'd want at your table? It doesn't have, it could have been those women, it could have been somebody else, but who would you want at your next table?
Ooh, dead or alive,
Now, it
or
could be dead or alive, yeah. Who would you
dead or
want, you would
alive.
love to have
Oh
a conversation with?
gosh, good question. I oh ooh, ooh,
You
ooh.
can just pick whatever comes to your mind first. See, this, you can tell
Um,
this is very organic and authentic.
yes. Okay, I'm going to go Angelina Jolie,
Really? Okay.
Angelina
Okay.
Jolie, Jesus, and let's go with shoots.
You're going to think of
Uh,
somebody else
Ruth
later.
Bader Ginsburg.
Oh, okay. That's a very eclectic group, isn't
Yeah,
that? Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. I love that. That's awesome. Oh, if is there anything as we get ready to close out that I haven't asked you, Sherry, that you want to make sure this audience, these leaders here, these difference makers here, as they want to make an impact? What's one thing you would tell them that you maybe you haven't gotten to share?
You know, people ask me, who was the favorite woman that you met? What was the favorite state that you visited? And I always say, I can't tell you that because if one of them was missing, it wouldn't have been the same experience. And
Mm,
that's what I would like the listeners to know, that chisel away with all the stories that aren't yours, because you are here for a purpose. You're a leader. You can lead like no one else. It does, you can lead your family, your community, everywhere like nobody else, as long as you're being authentic, because the world needs everyone. It's not going to be the same if one person is living someone else's story.
that's right. So you have several books. Where would our listeners find your books and find
Amazon, or my name's here if you're looking at the screen, but Shari, Shari, last name is Leid, Leid. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Google, and more information than you ever want to know will
That's
pop
great.
up about me.
We'll put all that in the show notes. Well, thank you for unlocking your authentic self and helping these other women do the same and flipping the box. That's a big milestone, being able to create a national holiday, or I guess it's a national a recognition day by the
Yes,
archive,
yeah,
right?
correct.
Just sit down with somebody and to help see this big concern that we all have with loneliness in our communities. Because there's probably somebody in your network or somebody that needs go have a meal with somebody. So thank you for
Yes.
encouraging that, and thank you for the work you're doing. I'm so excited you're here in Dallas. And
I think, we really should share a meal together.
yes, yes,
Shall we?
absolutely. We're going to go do that.
Yay.
So thank you again for being here, and can't wait to meet you in person.
Wonderful. Thank you.